things that are now in the film. Because he forgot about being scientific and he was more and more amusing. And he got wonderful speech. So the whole crew was absolutely delighted. And not only that, but he already organized for us a big meal for he shot it at his summer house outside of the city. It was a wonderful adventure for the crew, and we got a wonderful material. Then I got this guy who was expert in crime, and with him we also repeated the same thing.
He was also a real policeman.
No, he was a colleague of mine, kind of friend from studies, but he was a very passionate criminologist. He was actually a doctor in legal. He studied law.
He actually taught at the crime academy.
Yeah, and he became one of the great experts in crime and became great teacher for the old police courses and some international. He did some incredible international stuff. And even now, at the age of, he's now close to 80, he's 78 or something. His last story that we learned like a few months ago, there was this big strange case in Singapore that they could not sort out. There were people who were doing printing fake dollars. But they were absolutely perfect. So they could not find any single proof. They were all experts. The guys were caught. Police was sure that they were doing these falsified hundreds of dollars, but there was absolutely no trace behind. And they got all experts from all police, I don't know, from New York, from Paris, nowhere, nothing. No way to connect them with the... And then he looked, he was invited from Belgrade, now a retired expert. He flew to Singapore and looked around and he said that he wanted, how do you call breeze? You know, when you get in the medical...
To take a sample.
From somebody's ear or from somebody's nose. So he said, God just thinks from their noses and from their ears. And they got it. And there was some green color of money. Because the nose and ear gets when you deal with big quantity of new money. Or, you know, this bank from bank, when you steal. Then there are very little tiny things from this color of dollars gets in the nostril. And so he sorted out it from like 10,000 miles, you know, just being very intelligent, expert in the police work. So he was pleasure because he was immediately telling us all these incredible stories. He brought us to this criminal museum with all this stuff. And so practically I got the backbone of the film, these two speeches. And then we looked for the story, and then the story came out quite easily, just from what we learned from all our contacts. So film was like always done day by day. We would shoot for a few days and then sit down and think more. And we got film shot very cheaply because we shot everything on the spot. And then what was even nicer, when film came out, we discovered when film was already filmed in the laboratory. The laboratory belonged to the big studio. And people in the studio discovered they never had official decision to start shooting of this film. They believed that this film is going to be shot in the springtime, and there was this decision, in the springtime we'll, get this film. And we almost like shot the film without studio because we were always around, but in the studio, like people in the lab, they knew us, and people who brought the cameras. So we got like film shot almost like a gift of the company. And then our return of our gift was, it was the first film in Yugoslavia that had more than 1 million viewers.
In Yugoslavia?
In Yugoslavia. And until then, they were all like first 10 films on the lists were always Hollywood movies. Then domestic films were like 15, 20. And we got first time film that was better than any Hollywood movie, because everybody went to see, it was in our language. It was like our guys. So it was, I don't know, I'm telling some kind of story from my village. But it was a pleasure to do it.
No, it's a very interesting story. But everything you said now, the way you were shooting the film, this almost improvisational approach, I think one very important thing that when we watch your films is that we get a sense of playfulness out of them. It reminds me of a quote by another important Serbian director, Karanovic, who said that filmmaking should always be a game. And usually cinema is perceived as something very, very, very serious. So, but watching your films, it seems as if also you were having a lot of fun when you were making them. But today when people, when in film circles you mention the name of Makavejev, everybody jumps up, it's like a Paulo reflex, they say, subversive, anarchic, political. Were you, when you were making these playful things, aware that you're making something that will cause such strong emotions also in a political
Not
sense?
at all, no. We just, our dream was, because we were just, from university, just making amateur films before, and some documentaries. So we were just happy to get a movie. But what was luck was that we were all friends, like set designer and, most of the crew was like friends. And like, for example, I got a story about a woman who dealt with telephones, and I went to the sanitary department to see like what is most interesting in sanitary department in the city. And they said this and that, and said, but what creates most trouble for you? They said, oh, rats. That's really horrible, We have these new magazines and this, and the rats, they're like everywhere. And so then I went to see the crew that was fighting rats. And so that's how we got this story about the rat catcher. It started from discovering that in the sanitary department of town, from all people who were fighting with something, the rat catchers were like avant-garde. So we went with them, and we shot, the whole thing was shot like in a day. We just organized some old market. We put they put poison, and in the morning dead rats come out. And then they just collect these dead rats and burn them. But we didn't know how they do it. So first we did what they said. We said, what are you doing? We said, now we have to put poison in, and we chose the market, and they did it. And we came in the morning, and suddenly there was a plenty of rats, and we just shot them. But what happened in the meantime? Because they knew that we already shot them when they were putting this poison. And they were dressed in some kind of dark thing. They have this some kind of official thing. But next day, because they knew now they're in the cinema, next day they came with white shirts and ties. And you never call it. So in the film, if you look at it again, you see that rat catchers are catching these dead rats with having white shirts and ties. So like the humor came from them, Because like if I was like a professional director, I would say, oh, it's wrong, where's the costume designer? Dress them as they should be dressed. But I discovered that they understood better, like what we like in movies. We like in movies things that are fun, And then, so there are like things happening like that all the time. So for example, we have to shoot two of them, how they meet. And I wrote in the script that two of them will kind of meet, and then he will visit to have a cup of coffee with her and watch TV. That was just one idea. But we found this little apartment. The apartment was about 20 square meters. They were like very poor apartments. Behind some big house, there was another house in the garden, in the back. And then on the back side of the second house, were really these small apartments. So front house on the street was bourgeois apartments. Second one were like for people with less rich. And the third part, it was like a second yard, where she lived. It was these small apartments. So we chose one, and all these apartments were without water. And they would like bring water from the well or from some other place. So we immediately decide to bring a scene with a guy who will install the water. Then she can have a shower, and they start living together. What happened is that like 1 month after we left, on all other floors, the same guy who was working with water installed this boiler. So we were like constantly talking with people when we go somewhere, So we have to do her cooking the coffee, and then she was supposed to sit. They should have to watch TV. Later we decided to put Eisenstein or Zigavertov on on the screen. But for the shoot, the story was about her just bringing this cup of coffee, and then they being like both from poor background, but living in a big city. And they're both from somewhere. She's from the north, from some kind of Hungarian part of country, and he's from the south, Muslim. So they are trying to be as urban as possible, so they both behave a little more like educated people. They are polite to each other, and they have this behavior. So we got it all, actors knew how to do it. And when we came to shoot, it happened that the thing for the réchaud for cooking, how do you call it? Water? Stove didn't work, broke. It was not, electric stove broke. And then I was calling prop men to come in, or electricians to do something. And she said, but look, in my home, when she was a student, I was always using the iron if something happened. I said, how do you do it? And she said, we found an iron and she did it. And so we included this iron thing in the story. That is much nicer. Now there was another thing that I liked, because in these poor homes, very often they would have Tito's picture on the wall. You know, like you have a president's picture in poor homes, in all countries actually. So the idea was to have a Tito's picture that she would like take it off and use it as a plate. And then somebody just told me, look, let's have something normal. So we got something else. But she takes it off the wall. And so they have this coffee. And of course, and then the whole scene was like much longer than normal. If they drank coffee, it would be very short. But they both, being good actors, they knew that how do you play like primitive people when they meet first time. Then they are both more polite and they don't reveal what they're planning, and they know what is going to happen in an hour. But before that, you have to say something nice and speak about theater, you know. So this is what they did. So the film was producing itself. And then when we were looking I asked her what you can do. So she was telling me that she's doing this soap bubbles. We have like few shots with these soap bubbles. She showed me that, and I said, okay, we shot few, but it's about lonely woman. So we use it for the moments of her loneliness. She said, but she said, oh, but my forte is cherry strudel. Her mother taught her cherry strudel. Would like me to do a cherry strudel? Said, sure. So then we brought everything that was necessary, and she was doing the whole cherry strudel was done as a documentary. And I even had some lines that he has to talk to her, and it was all cut out because cherry strudel was so fantastic, the whole work, that I dropped the dialogue, and that was just the nice music. And you get that's the lady who is sitting there in the first row. I think that she invented that it should be opera. It should be the opera. And you told me which music to use. She claimed that she was not participating.
Yes, because Dušan Makavejev is not our only special guest. We also have with us Mr. Bojana Marian Makavejev, a long-time companion and co-worker of Mr. Makavejev. For 50 years you worked together. She is, for example, responsible for the wonderful sound collage that we heard in WR yesterday. She's very shy, but she promised that today she will also maybe speak a little bit about how the two of you work together, how does it work, this improvisation. So, Bojana, maybe...
She's not shy.
But she took very nasty, that's
So you'll get back immediately. It's a nightmare to work with him.